Hello, my soccer universe. My name is Roland and this is Football Talk. And today's episode, we're gonna talk about all the European midweek action. This is actually the first episode where we have all three competitions up and running. And I guess for most of the upcoming year or upcoming season, I should say, this will be the rhythm. I will release a video reviewing the midweek, the weekend's action on Tuesday, and then the midweek action on Friday, because I don't not only want to get the Champions League in, like most of the others, I also want to talk about the Europa League and the Conference League. Maybe also a little bit because, most Austrian teams are in there and I am from Austria, but also because these competitions are so criminally overlooked and they need to get a little bit more love. And yes, it's the big behemoth Champions League that everyone is talking about. But the Champions League, honestly, when I compare it, and I said in all my preview videos, the one thing that Champions League has going for it, if you only want to see goals, the Champions League has plenty of goals because there's so many lopsided results. Meanwhile, in there, that, the goal average is well above 3. I think around 3.5. Whereas the other two competitions that are way more level, it's just on a low 2.6-ish level, which is a little bit below what we would expect. I think the overall average in club football is around 2.7, but it also shows how relatively even these competitions are. And this is what you get when the teams get more even, the goals come down. However, there were plenty of surprises in there, and that is also quite exciting. And yes, I sometimes feel that the Conference League maybe could use a second team from each of the big leagues, maybe to garner a little bit more interest. But on the other side, I think it is good as it is. And the Europa League is a competition that, should not be messed with too much. I have to say that especially Conference League also did suffer the most, that it's now a closed competition, because the last few years we usually got some pretty good teams from the Europa League in, and still it was the teams in the Conference League that actually prevailed, so that actually made it quite interesting. Whereas Champions League to Europa League, you saw Champions League teams going deeper as well. Before we talk about the matches, and we'll start about the Champions League, and I will do most of the results now from memory, not having much prepared except for the results itself. But I've pretty much seen it all. It is all very much a blur. I mean, so many matches all at once. But I will do it mostly from memory. And given my general feelings, we of course will talk about where do my predictions go for this Champions League. I just want to point out, when I think about winners and losers, I mean, French teams have been doing exceptionally well over all three competitions. They also had the biggest coefficient gain, but also Polish teams were really good, and Italian teams, did do well too. I mean, especially in the Champions League, there was only now yesterday in the Europa League, Roma was a major letdown, but everything else, it was mostly wins, and that after a relatively slow start, I think was good to see. The English teams were so and so. Germans also had a very, very mixed week. I just want to point out Austria, absolutely crazy and bad. Sturm Graz, a lonely win, but especially for Salzburg and also where the Rapid were showing, I didn't like one bit. But also Greek teams lost everything. Belgian teams also really not good overall. So, was interesting to see these trends. Everything, of course, was kind of conditioned by the big match on Wednesday between Barcelona and PSG, and we'll talk about it a little bit more when we review the matches. The only thing that really annoyed me in that one is that it was billed as the Champions League final we should have gotten. No, we should not have gotten, because Barcelona were defensively a shambles. They were taken apart by this Inter team that got completely flattened by PSG. I don't think we would have gotten a better final. Yes, we maybe would have gotten a little bit more star power, and yes, maybe with the coach leaving for Inter, this had maybe an impact. But honestly, I really hated it. Such a disrespect again towards a league like Serie A that actually beat Barcelona fair and square, and Barcelona had it in their own hands. I mean, if their superstar runs to the corner flag, instead of taking that shot that, yes, hit the post, but killing off the game, not only would Barcelona probably have advanced to the final, but also we could potentially talk about Lamine Yamal winning the Ballon d'Or. And so this is such a ridiculous argument. I just wanted to get this out. It really, really, really annoyed me. But PSG won and put everything to rest, even with a second string squad. And so I always was more of a Barcelona guy, I have to be honest, but I find especially latest Barcelona fans rather annoying because they cannot live with the fact that it's not the greatest team in the world anymore. And yes, they play fun stuff under Hansi Flick. However, it's so glaring where the weaknesses are, and yes, they have a super talent coming up, but this is not the Barcelona of the 2010s. Just live with it. It is not. All and enough said. Let's start Champions League. Let's run through the results from Tuesday. Atalanta, huge 2-1 win over Club Brugge. Club Brugge had eliminated them last year in the playoff, which was such a downer after they almost made it into the top 8. And again, they were 1-0 down. However, Pasalic inspires the comeback first, assisting the equalizer and very late on getting the admittedly lucky win. Real Madrid had no trouble with Kairat, but that was to be expected. Kairat could have filled the stadium 4 times over. It's Kylian Mbappé. Just look at his finishing, just without any humor, but getting it done, scoring a hat-trick to put Real Madrid 3-0 up. Camavinga then scored one. I think even Brahim Diaz got in on the action. Got a little bit ridiculous late on as well. Ridiculous is also, and I in a way called it, always watch Eintracht Frankfurt. This is a team that can score a lot of goals, but is defensively not too sound. That is exactly what's shown against Atletico Madrid. Atletico Madrid said that was so in form thanks to the big win over Real Madrid that in the first half they completely took Frankfurt apart, and there was some really nice play, very un-Atleti-like, and actually really pleasing to watch attacking combinations. The best one probably for a goal that was in the end and not given, but one-touch football, I mean, this is probably the best what we have seen so far at the moment, and fully deservedly so. Yes, Eintracht did have the chance as well, and maybe could have gotten a second goal, but overall this was fully deserved. 5-1 win for Atleti. That's an exclamation point. And I again wonder, can they now play on like this, or will they just have a short high again and then come down? Exactly the opposite was Chelsea against Benfica. I mean, what a dreary game decided by a very stupid own goal. Jose Mourinho trying to be liked by everyone there as well. So, it was not much to talk about. Chelsea is not good. Benfica is just, Benfica is a great team in Portugal. Even in Portugal, they are not yet up to snuff, and so it was always going to go one way. How an outsider can take apart a Premier League team was shown by Bode Glimt taking on Spurs, the repeat of the semi-final in the Europa League last season. But, Jens-Peter Hauge scored 2 goals to put them 2-0 up. This was fully deserved. There should have been more goals. I mean, he missed a penalty rather badly in the first half. It was Bode all over. It was just then Spurs has a bench. They can react to it, and got in the end the job done because of their bench and get the equalizer through Richarlison. And you could see then how Bode late on were maybe a little bit too afraid of themselves, of actually making a really big statement here. And so, was maybe not meant to be. The big statement, though, came for Galatasaray. A 1-0 win over Liverpool. A Liverpool team that, again, looks a little bit out of sorts. And yes, it was only a Victor Osimhen penalty, but mostly it was Galatasaray, especially in the first half. They were dominating game. And it was interesting that the opening goal came from the one big chance that Liverpool had through Etiquette. But then they get caught on a counter-attack, and Szoboszlai doesn't have control over his hands. I personally think, yes, he hits him in the face and so on. There was no intent there. For me, it's not necessarily a foul. I have to say it as well, by the rules, blah, blah, I know it is. So it's 1-0 for Galatasaray. Liverpool then wanted to have a penalty later on as well, but was not going to happen. And had a really hard time at Galatasaray. And actually, the atmosphere goes without saying, the atmosphere in Turkey is usually absolutely great. So there you go. We also had Inter taking part Slavia. I mean, it took a while, but this was the expected result. Inter now slowly getting also into the comfort zone. Watch out for them. Marseille 4-0 over Ajax. I mean, yes, the first 3 shots for OM went all in. But where's the defending by Ajax? I mean, this is an Ajax side that was a shambles. This was a shadow of their former selves. This was embarrassing what Ajax were showing. OM, huge win. Now they have beaten PSG, they've beaten Ajax, they got the win. So I must say, it's on a roll. That Zerbi ball is currently working. Again, it's early on. And early on is what I hear also for Bayern, although Bayern at times looks scary. I mean, Paphos, it was clear. This is not a team that will answer any questions about Bayern. I mean, just look at the 2 goals that Harry Kane is scoring. It was there was a clash of at least 3 leagues between these 2 teams. And yes, the consolation goal was a real nice one from far out. And this is maybe pointing that Bayern defensively might not be sound. But then again, do you really need to defend? I actually think that Michael Olise might be one of the most underrated players in Europe at the moment. Really great stuff what he's showing. But the game itself, overall Tuesday, I think for Bodø Glimt, Spurs, Galatasaray, Liverpool, those 2 games were the ones that kept actually everything a little bit alive, because everything else was rather lopsided, especially in the late slot, and Chelsea-Benfica was such a blah game. I think Wednesday then was a little bit better. Not the early slot. I mean, Karabakh against Copenhagen, that was a little bit of a surprise, the 2-0 win, but also deserved one. And Saint-Gilloise were just outplayed by Newcastle, 4-0 win. It was rather lopsided. Monaco, though, got a rather lucky point against Manchester City. Haaland scores 2 goals, but bring it home. It was already the equalizer, the first equalizer for Monaco that was against the run of play. And then second half, the game settled down, and then you give away a penalty by taking down Eric Dyer. Reckless challenge, even if he hit the ball with his foot and so on. It was, the blood was all over. Had to be a penalty. And so Eric Dyer, and I think even converted to make it 2-2. Leverkusen against PSV, 2 very flawed teams in a European context, especially 1-1. I think Leverkusen were a slightly better team. Dortmund actually took apart Athletic Club quite expertly. I mean, we knew there's a golfing class, but Athletic Club also don't look quite right. Gotta say though, it was 2-0 at the half. Athletic Club pulled one back, and then there were some nerving moments where, if there's a second goal and there's an equalizer, it maybe could flip the other way. But in the end, Sabitzer makes it 3-1, and then it was very one-sided. Arsenal played a B squad against Olympiacos, got the job done, nothing to talk home about. We should talk a whole lot about Barcelona against PSG. Not too much, because I don't want this video to become, or this episode to become an over 1 hour episode. But this was rather entertaining stuff. Both teams very open. This was left to right. Early on, Barcelona played much better, was much more on the initiative. Sabari with a clearance that I thought this was a goal by Ferran Torres too, to be honest. He scores in the opening goal, and at that point you really thought, that most Barca fans thought that, Barcelona is really gonna make a statement win here over, as I said, a PSG that was missing their front line. However, it's Nuno Mendes and Hakimi that then really turn the game around. Nuno Mendes gets, or assists, I think, the equalizer through Mayulu with a run. And yes, later on, he should have gotten a second yellow card. I mean, probably red cards could have been issued, but the longer the game went on, and again, Barca started better in the first half of the second half. This makes no sense whatsoever, but you know what I mean. The third quarter of the game, even though we don't have quarters. But in the last half hour, this was all PSG, and it was actually surprising how PSG did not score sooner than this absolutely nice goal by Gonzalo Ramos, assisted by Hakimi, and it started actually from their own box with Lee Kang-in being, I think, at the heart of it as well. It was a really nice counter and taking advantage of the super high line by Barcelona. That does not look as settled as it was last season. So also has to be said, PSG fully deserving of that win. And yes, both sides were missing important players, but you saw that PSG has meanwhile an identity that Barcelona also have, but an identity that is not so reliant on superstars anymore, and they can be even more devastating if they have better players in. Devastating also was the partnership between De Bruyne and Højlund. Napoli did not deserve to win over Sporting, but there was one nice De Bruyne pass after the little almost bust up with Conte on the weekend against Milan, but he played and he assisted Højlund. Then Sporting got the equalizer. Was it a penalty? I think, and that was deserved. And then again they get caught out. It was a De Bruyne free kick and Haaland heads it in as 2-1. And Villarreal Juventus was potentially the most fun game of them all. Villarreal dominating the first half, having won the lead. Then Juventus come back, and it's Federico Gatti who gave them the lead with a bicycle kick. Although there was a head there as well. I mean, I could have very well seen this called back as well, at least, especially if he misses the ball there. But then again, it's Juventus not getting it over the line, and late on Villarreal with an ex-Juve player whose name escapes me now, getting the equalizer. So really fun stuff. Not a game between two teams that we will see going far into the competition, but a fun game to watch, and it's also good. Good old Spanish-Italian duel. The Villarreal is not a big name. Juve should be a big name. I mean, by their own understanding, Juve should beat Villarreal. It's not the case right now. Let's look at the expected standings. I mean, not much has changed. PSG is moving up in second behind Arsenal. Bayern also now in third place. Real Madrid stay in fourth. And Inter, Barcelona, Manchester City and Liverpool drop out, but they're still in the top 8 to be projected. It's then... Not, 0.5 behind Liverpool at 13.8 is Chelsea, Spurs, Napoli, Dortmund, Atletico, Atalanta, Newcastle, Juve. Those would be the seeded ones in the playoff. And then we have not in the playoff, but not seeded, Karabakh, Galatasaray, OM Sporting, Eintracht, Leverkusen, Club Brugge and Villarreal. But it's relatively tight with Union Saint-Gilloise, Monaco, and then there's the drop. Athletic Club is probably the first team where we can say they probably will not make it into the top 24, although, if they go on a run, but they have a draw that, is maybe not too favorable for them. Benfica is really low, below Paphos even at the moment. Ajax also. There are two really big name teams that are very, very low. The bottom two teams are Slavia and Kairat. You would expect Kairat, Bodø/Glimt, potentially, but it will be tough to get in. I could though see them beating Juventus. I think Bodø/Glimt is a team that is probably the team that I would checkmark for a little surprise. As always, let's check the expected tournament bracket based on these standings. And again, this is only one possible scenario. Let's look at the left half, the upper left. Actually, a lot of Premier League teams are in there. We would have potential. Karabakh would probably oust Juventus the way I see it going. Usually with Serie A teams in early in early in the year. But it would be Juve. Arsenal would sound good, but Juve is not the Juve that we know right now. Villarreal Chelsea is also a dangerous game, and the winner would play against Liverpool. So potentially Liverpool Arsenal for a slot in a semi-final. So that would actually sound quite interesting in a very early meeting. Then we have a German duel, Frankfurt against Dortmund to play Inter. And Inter wouldn't want to play either of these, I'm absolutely certain. Sporting against Atletico Madrid, meeting then Real Madrid. What more than another Madrid derby for another slot in a potential, first quarterfinal and then going into the semi-final, because either Madrid team would be favored, in my opinion, over Frankfurt, Dortmund and Inter. On the right side, we would have the winner of PSG taking on the winner... We would have PSG taking on the winner of Galatasaray and Newcastle. Interesting, but PSG should be favored over those three cities. City against the winner of Spurs against Club Brugge. Also interesting, and so it's PSG against City. The oil classico, if you would like. So again, plenty of English power in there, but not as with PSG in there as well. Would be a very loaded quadrant, I have to say. And then the lower one, Leverkusen, Napoli. I would favor Napoli, at least at the moment, against Barcelona. And OM, Atalanta, and playing Bayern Munich. So I don't know who would be the better one at the moment. It's really hard to call Atalanta at the moment. However, Bayern Munich would be the favorite. And Barca Bayern, also one of those eternal classics of the Champions League. So yeah, and Barcelona would meet PSG, at least in this scenario, the earliest in the semi-final, and we wouldn't again not get the PSG against Barca final that everyone wants so much to see. As for the overall favorites, it's still Arsenal, and many will laugh at that, but Arsenal is a very deep team. Yes, change squad, nothing really exciting, but have a decent draw. Very much already into the knockout stage. Can very well see that PSG have a relatively tough draw. Barcelona is behind that. Liverpool have now lost to Galatasaray, which is probably not expected. Bayern Munich is slowly on the rise. But I would say, yeah, top seven until Manchester City. Those are the realistic candidates. Chelsea, Inter, Napoli, and Atleti only if they are really going on a roll. That's at least how I see it. Let's look at the upcoming matches. Tuesday, 21st of October, we have international break coming up. Barça against Olympiacos and Karat against Pafos. I mean, yes, everyone look at Barcelona against Olympiacos. But Karat, Pafos, this is for the real Champions League crazies. Two teams that, of course, very undervalued. Leverkusen, PSG. You know, a year or 2 years ago, this would have been a really, really interesting one. Now I fear that PSG is probably too good. But Atleti going to Arsenal, I think this is probably the pick of the bunch, I gotta say. We have also Copenhagen against Dortmund. I think there's something with the fans in there. Villarreal against City, Newcastle, Benfica, very clear favorites, the English teams. PSV against Napoli should also be Napoli. That do that as do Inter against Union Saint-Gilloise. Then on the Wednesday games, the early games, Athletic Club and Karabakh, at least the win for Athletic Club should be in there. Although Karabakh, don't overlook them. And Galatasaray, Bodø, Glimt. Can Bodø do it far away in a hostile atmosphere? Spurs have to go to Monaco, so Monaco taking on two English teams in a row. Atalanta, Slavia, not much. Bayern, very clear favorite over Club Brugge. Eintracht, Liverpool. If Eintracht can settle their defensive frailties, it could be an interesting one. Chelsea, Ajax sounds much better than it is. As is Real Madrid against Juventus, because Juventus is not Juventus. I think Sporting against Marseille is probably more fun to watch. So, after this Champions League expose, let's talk about the Europa League and the Conference League. One thing that stood out for me in the Europa League were the really bad penalty-taking performances, and none bigger than what happened between Roma and Lille. Lille took a very early lead, and Roma really had hard time breaking down Lille. Had, I think, a quadruple chance in the first half, where even if you would have put the ball on the line, Roma probably would not have put it over the line. And then late on, they get a penalty. Yes, it was a handball, blah, 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 but I personally would not have loved to see that one given. But yeah, they have the penalty. Dovbyk steps up. Very poor penalty, is saved. However, Lille defender ran into the box, so the Belgian referee decides to have it retaken. Dovbyk takes the exact same shitty penalty again sees it saved. However, keeper was off the line, and now it's Matthias Süle. And both of Dovbyk's penalties went to the right from his point of view. Matthias Süle, and takes an equally stupid penalty. Saved again. So 3 saves by Lille's goalie, and Roma cannot find the breakthrough, and Lille get a pretty big 1-0 win. Bologna were a little bit better in first half, took a lead through an Orsolini goal, although there was some defensive errors in there. Freiburg then much better in the second half, get an equalizer through an Junior Adamo penalty. Brann beat Utrecht thanks to his first half goal. Braga, for most of the time better at Celtic, took the lead through a beautiful goal, although goalie did not look good there as well. Goalie Schmeichel, I think it was a shot by Orta. Celtic then tried, got a little bit more into the game, had some good chances to an EK, because very late on Celtic defender just shoots the ball at a Braga attacker to go into the net. Young Boys 2-0 at FCSB. I'm always happy when Young Boys win, even though Swiss teams should not win too much for the European coefficient, because they are really about to put Austria behind them. But, I like Young Boys a whole lot, also because of the fan friendship between Young Boys and Lusk. So I was really happy to see them. And on top of that, they were playing a really nice black and white jersey with some golden trim as well. Fenerbahce beat Nice, that was a pretty big one. Real Betis also beating the surprise team of the first round, Ludo Goretz. And then Panathinaikos, they did not have a good start to the Greek league season. However, they beat, I think, it was young Boys, I think 5-1 away from home a week ago. They even take the lead at that one. The go-ahead Eagles then, very late on with a brace, turned the game around, and Victoria Pilsen with 3-0 over Malmö. There were also 3 red cards in there, so I think it was Malmö had the better of the first half until Pilsen took the lead a little bit out of sequence. Then there was a yellow-red, and then Pilsen went away with that result. And interesting stuff for sure. In the late slot, a very surprising result for another Swiss team in Basel, 2-0 over Stuttgart, scoring early. Stuttgart also missing a penalty, and then Shaqiri, a nice lob, but I think in the end someone just on the line put it over the line. But that was a surprising result for Basel, who had just lost at Freiburg a week ago. Celta came back, were down to PAOK, but turned around. Of course, Iago Aspas was instrumental in that one. Porto took the lead. However, Cervena Svesta gave the equalizer, and there was one of the few goals conceded by Porto this season. However, later on it was a nice counter-attack that Porto give Porto the win. Feyenoord hold on to Aston Villa, but in the end it's Buendia who breaks the deadlock, and then Marlon runs through the Feyenoord defense. Cannot get a shot off, but the ball goes to McGinn, 2-0. Aston Villa overall the deserved winner. Genk was a curious game, and was also curious that this was one of the 4 games shown in the goal show in Austria. I really don't get it, because Toby Laval from Lask was not playing, so why do you show this one? Genk actually were the better team in the first 30 minutes, however, Ferencváros score, and then in the end got the deserved 3 points. What can I tell you about Salzburg at Lyon? Early penalty given away that goalie Schlager saves, and then he poorly plays it out just a few minutes later, and with a nice cross in, and Satriano heads it in. It's 1-0, and then also the Schlager again makes a save in the second half. Salzburg slowly got into it, but this is not the Salzburg anymore that we know. That was like pressing and really high energy going forward. This was a much more tentative one. There was the energy completely missing. Yes, they had a couple of chances, but early in the second half, Lyon get the job done. Again, it was already saved, and then the cross comes in, and Kluivert can head it in. Maccabi Tel Aviv still in the competition, take a lead against Dinamo Zagreb. How Dinamo Zagreb turn it around, and it was Ivan Ljubicic, Austro-Croatian, who actually was the star of the show. One of the surprise results for sure was Midtjylland beating Forest 3-2 away from that. A 1-0 lead. Forest got the equalizer, but then again Midtjylland take a 2-1 lead. 3-1 in the 88th, then a penalty, and Forest cannot find an equalizer. So very entertaining game, probably the best of the evening. Although Sturm Graz against Rangers was also a pretty good game. In the first half, Sturm really took Rangers apart, scored early through Tommy Horvath, although the Rangers goal didn't look good there. But just at the moment where Rangers got a little bit better into the game, Tommy Horvath with a brilliant free kick pass to Ota Kitashvili. Everyone was expecting a long free kick from the right to the left, but he plays it flat and keeps it on the right side. Kitashvili in there. He could have even played it over to Malone, but just between the arm and the leg of the goal into the goal. An absolute brilliantly taken goal. However, I think it was Gassama who then got one back in the 48th minute, and then it was a little bit hanging on for Sturm. All the energy from the first half was gone, but in the end, Sturm Graz hang on. The only win for Austria so far in a European League phase. A much needed one, barely keeps them in play. If you look overall at the expected standings now in the Europa League, Villa still very much the favorites in there. Lyon, Porto, Lille, Braga, Zagreb, Betis all move up. Roma go big down. This was a huge loss against Lille. Although I still could see Roma maybe finishing top 8. On the other side, Gasparini's side have everything but convincing so far. Midtjylland just outside Freiburg, Stuttgart, the 2 Germans in 10 and 11, Celta, Forest, Fenerbahce, Bologna, and Panathinaikos. I mean, Forest have dropped already too many points to be a little bit higher up, but maybe they can get also the campaign going. Then the unseeded teams would be Basel, Brann, according to my model, Ferencváros, Genk, Pilsen, Razgrad, Sturm, and Young Boys. So the 2 Austro and Swiss are just in, but FCSB is just behind, Celtic is just behind. Feyenoord is also not too much off, but you don't see many Dutch teams in there. And then towards the bottom we have Salzburg, Rangers, Malmö, Utrecht, and Maccabi Tel Aviv. Those are the bottom 5 teams. In the bracket, again, Let's look left to right. Let's assume the seeded teams go through. So we would have the Aston Villa going on over the winner between Basel and Panathinaikos, and Roma over the winner between Young Boys and Midtjylland. There's a Swiss duel in there according to this bracket. And so you would be Aston Villa against Roma. I would say Aston Villa come out of that quadrant. Then Braga play the winner of Pilsen against Celta. I would think Celta for that one, and then maybe Celta over Braga, although Braga. Portuguese teams have been also doing really well. So let's say Braga for now. Then Forest, I would assume, would go on over Genk, but facing then Lille. Lille is a really interesting team. Lille against Braga, I would say Lille. So we have Villa against Lille in the one semi-final. Look that one up later on. And then we have Lyon against the winner of Bologna against Baran. Still Lyon, I would say. Betis over the winner between Freiburg and Sturm. Freiburg-Sturm would be a great duel, I have to say. But Betis is a better team than either of these. And then it would be Betis against Lyon. Also sounds interesting. Betis, I would say. Dinamo Zagreb against Stuttgart or Ludogorets. I think out of those three, Stuttgart would move on, and then Porto, Fenerbahce and Ferencváros. I could see Ferencváros doing something against Fenerbahce, but Porto is too big, so we will have Stuttgart against Porto. Porto is quite good at the moment. So Betis against Porto and Villa against Braga. We said two Portuguese teams going high. Villa against Porto in the final. Sounds interesting for sure. This is kind of a little preview where the Europa League could go. When we look at the over favorites, despite Roma suffering, they are still in second place. So Villa, Roma, Lyon, Porto. Those are the top four favorites. Betis, Lille, Forest and Bologna behind. I think that Stuttgart and Freiburg are a little bit undervalued, although Stuttgart kind of confirmed that they shouldn't be rated much higher thanks to their rather poor performance. When we look at the upcoming matches, it's always hard to pick out some. If I go towards the bottom on the early slot, I think Lyon against Basel could be an interesting one. Salzburg take on Ferencváros, an old Austro-Hungarian duel. Go Ahead Eagles against Aston Villa is interesting because, Go Ahead Eagles have not been in Europe, I think, in over 50 years. I would say Fenerbahce against Stuttgart, also interesting. Feyenoord against Panathinaikos, this is a really must-win scenario for Feyenoord. And Braga against Red Star Belgrade. Again, Red Star going to Portugal. Let's see if Braga is equally hard. Second slot, Roma need to win against Pilsen. Will not be easy. Celta against Nice. Nice is not good this season. Sturm Graz, after beating Rangers, now have to go to Celtic. In Paradise, not sure how they will do. Freiburg-Utrecht. We have Lille against PAOK. What else? Forest against Porto. I think that's the one that I'm looking out for. And let's see if Young Boys can get it done against Bulgarian champions Ludogorets. One more competition. Let's talk about the Conference League. So, Conference League, I think Dynamo Kiev against Crystal Palace was a really nice opening game in a way, although it happened with all the other games, but Crystal Palace were just too good against Dynamo Kiev. Can I just mention that Polish teams had 3 home games, and in addition, they hosted also Dynamo Kiev. Absolute crazy stuff, what is going on in Poland. The Conference League is becoming the Polish League, because all the games in Poland were very well visited to top that as well. So Poland, the heart of the Conference League, after hosting last year's final as well. Let's see if Polish teams could go far as well. Jagiellonia Białystok beat Hamrun Spartans. This was not much to talk home about. They 1-0 win, and Hamrun went 1-0 down, even got a red card. Finnish champions QPS over Drita 2-1. Lausanne against Breidablik 3-0. There's only one word to describe Rapid's performance against Lech Poznan. Absolute shambles. I mean, yes, after a few seconds I could have taken the lead, but it was an offside goal. But after that, nothing. Absolutely nothing. Too timid. They just let Poznan really take them apart, and then Hedel makes also 2 mistakes. He also saves a penalty, but it was 3-0 at the halftime when Ishak also had hit the post. He missed the penalty, so it could have been 5 at the half. Then Poznan let it off a little bit. Radulovic pulls him back, but then again, hitting the crossbar, and they get a goal as well. Poznan fully destroying Rapid. And yeah, Hütteldorf at the moment is not a happy place after such a great start. Noah get a surprise win over Rijeka 1-0. Mainz beat Omonia thanks to a penalty. Rayo over Scandia on their return to Europe after 25 years. I got it wrong. It's after 25 years, but Rayo hasn't played for a long time in Europe. Get it done. Zrinjski are the table toppers after 5-0 over the Lincoln Red Imps. Have to say those Lincoln Red Imps jerseys looked rather interesting. In the late slot, Aberdeen took a lead over Shakhtar Donetsk, but watch out for Shakhtar Donetsk. They are the team that have the easiest draw. They turn it around, get it up to 3-1, win 3-2. Larnaca against AZ 4-0 looks ugly, but after 2 minutes, AZ were reduced down to 10 men. Still, you shouldn't lose against Larnaca 4-0. A rather disappointing result for the Dutch teams as well. Celje turn it around against Ajax. I told you, Celje is a potential surprise team in this competition. Fiorentina, not much to talk home about. Yes, they get the win down over Sigma Olmütz. But we all know that Fiorentina still have a whole lot to work on. Legia lose at home to Sansalspor. That was a little bit unexpected, but Raków. So I think all Polish teams have home games. Crazy. 4 Polish teams all have home games. Raków beat Universiteta Craiova 2-0 at home. Shelburne on their European League phase debut, a 0-0 only against Hecken. Strasbourg winning against Slovan, already a 2-0 halftime lead, and then let it slide. And then Sparta Praha, the team that I'm wearing right now, also very easy 4-1 win over the Shamrock Rovers. In the expected standings, it's now Crystal Palace ahead of Shakhtar Donetsk. Yeah, they got the big away win, blah, blah, blah. I would expect Crystal Palace to do well in this competition. Strasbourg move ahead of Rayo and Fiorentina only in 5th place. But we know Fiorentina don't have an easy draw. Mainz, Sparta and Samsunspor round out the top 8. Then comes the Polish cavalry in Lech Poznan and Raków, Larnaca, Celje, Jagiellonia, Lausanne, AZ and Legia. So all 4 Polish teams are in the seeded spaces for now. AEK only unseeded as is Dynamo Kiev, but it's really tight. Legia 8.1, AEK 8.0, Dynamo Kiev 7.7, and 7.6 for Sigma Olmütz. Then we have Noah, Zrinjski Mostar, Rapid, Hecken and Rijeka. I fear that Rapid will not make it in. They actually, funnily enough, are in the same seeding spot as Lask was last year. Lost it really badly, and I can see this working out badly for Rapid as well, especially since they have quite some tricky opponents. I think they have to go another time to Poland as well, something they won't want to do. On the bubble, you know, Rijeka is 6.7, just about in my model, but Omonia 6.6 and Universiteta Craiova 6.5, Shamrock Rovers 6.3 and Slovan 6. Relatively close by, as is Kuopio and Tarita, Shelburne. You know, it's relatively close. Who are the bottom 3 sides? Breidablik, Hamrun and Lincoln, and Aberdeen surprisingly low, just ahead of those 3. Expected bracket, again, Crystal Palace would win over the win of AEK against Legia. Samsunspor, I'm not sure. Lech Poznan really convinced me. Would win over Rijeka, and I think I would favor them over Samsunspor. Jagiellonia, Noah. Jagiellonia needs to win it one, but then Fiorentina will have a hard time beating them, but should beat them. Rayo against the winner of Celje against Zrinjski. Celje is a tough opponent. Rayo, though, is a fun team. I would say Rayo, Fiorentina even. And Crystal Palace then against Rayo. So, I mean, 3 really big name teams on that left side. Crystal Palace in the final, honestly, the way these things are going. Dynamo Kiev against AZ, and then Shakhtar. I want to see Dynamo against Shakhtar, and yeah, I think Dynamo are the champions at the moment, so maybe Dynamo Kiev would go on. Sparta against the winner of Rakov against Hecken. Sparta probably, but then Dynamo Kiev over Sparta. That's at least the feeling that I have. Mainz will be the favorites again, the winner of Lausanne against Sigma. Rapid against Larnaca. I don't see Rapid going on at the moment, but Strasbourg would go on over either one of these. So Strasbourg against Mainz, and yeah, Dynamo Kiev against Strasbourg, I would say. And then Strasbourg against Crystal Palace in the final. that's an early pick for the final. Definitely an interesting one. If you look at the favorites, Crystal Palace ahead of Fiorentina, ahead of Strasbourg and Mainz. Rayo still undervalued. Then come Shakhtar. We have to see how it will all pan out. But Crystal Palace should be considered the huge favorites in this competition, which is absolutely weird to say. But just by the fact that they're in the Premier League, they're doing well, and Oliver Glasner doing an awesome job. They could do quite some damage in this competition. I'm quite certain about that. You see here the upcoming matches. I want to point out Rapid against Fiorentina because that's probably the game that I'll pay a lot of attention to. If we look otherwise, AEK against Aberdeen could be an interesting one. I would expect a nice stadium there. Rayo have to go to Hecken. We have... Strasbourg hosting Jagiellonia, not the easiest one. Then a late slot, AZ against Slovan is already a must win. Crystal Palace take on AEK Larnaca, Mainz against Zrinjski Mostar. And that's pretty much it. I'm sure there will be some fun stuff in there. And so this ends our long journey through Europe. Champions League, Europa League and Conference League all reviewed. Even though it was probably a little bit late, I hope you still had quite some fun. Quite some interesting action, and I always enjoy these Thursdays because it's just so much and there's always something fun happening. But I want to turn it over to you. Please let me know in the comments below, did the team that you were supporting win, or did it also disappoint, as so many teams, especially from the Austrian perspective, did? Only Sturm Graz kind of kept Austria alive. If you are a supporter of French football, this was your weekend, I would have to say. Same thing goes for Poland also, very much for certain. In any case, if you enjoyed this episode, please leave me a good review, or with a subscription, I would be very, very happy. Also tell somebody else if you enjoyed it, so that we can grow this community. And as always, have fun watching the games, and I'll talk to you soon about more things in my soccer universe. Bye!